part 2 of the Script and Language Lab on mirroring and matching. So for you here yesterday, we started part 1 and we spent some time, and I'll just do a super fast recap of what we talked about yesterday. We talked about, and we're going to start pretty much every session like this, the 4 tasks of influential communication come down to 4 things: building trust and rapport first, moving on to creating clarity, after clarity becomes facilitating a decision, and after decision becomes inspiring action. Because unless we inspire people to make decisions and get into action, we haven't been effective in our role as salespeople. And what we said is the mirroring and matching that we're talking about this week is really more of a trust and rapport tool. So as I said yesterday, go ahead and download that toolbox, that toolkit that I emailed out to everybody, right? If you didn't get the email over the weekend that has the 3-page document of the toolkit, which is essentially has 3 different not characters. It has 3 different classes of things here: the building trust and rapport, creating clarity, facilitating a decision, inspiring action. As we're learning new tools, I want you to put it into the column or the topic area so that as you are practicing and as you're communicating with folks, that you get the chance to say, okay, at this stage of the communication, what is the task? I'm trying to create clarity. Great. What tools do I have in my toolbox to help me do that? That's what the toolkit is about. And if you don't have that form, throw your name and email into chat, and I'll email it to you later on this afternoon. Okay? We talked yesterday about doing things to hit the mirror neurons. Those mirror neurons in the mirroring process are the parts of the brain that respond favorably when we see things happening that we can sort of emulate. And as an example, I sucked on a lemon yesterday. This was me. This was me sucking on a lemon yesterday. I took it right out of the video. And when I kind of held that lemon up and I sucked on it and talked about how sour it was, many of you told me that you kind of experienced yourself pucker up a little bit and salivate a little bit. And that's an example of how the mirror neurons work. And what we're trying to do in mirroring and matching, and why we're practicing these skills, is when we can communicate in a way that triggers these parts of the brain, it builds a sense of connection faster. First step of communication is to build trust and rapport, and using the mirror neurons, triggering the mirror neurons is what we're after here. Start to see a bunch of chats lining up who say you still need the toolkit. Great. As long as I have your email in chat, you'll get it later on today. So feel free to throw that in. Now, we talked about the subtle difference between matching and mirroring, and we did some mirroring exercises yesterday. And he said the difference was matching is kind of copying a gesture or a behavioral pattern exactly. And we use this crossed leg example. And what we said is when you're matching a behavioral pattern or a physical gesture, basically somebody does something physical, you wait a few seconds, 3 to 5, and then you do it. They cross their legs, you notice, you wait 3 to 5 seconds, you cross your legs. They lean in, you wait 3 to 5 seconds, and you lean in. They reach to their right, they reach to their left, they scratch their nose, 3 to 5 seconds, you kind of a little scratch nose, and that is matching. And it is powerful. It is the basis on with which hypnosis is built. It's the level of connection that comes in this kind of matching and the mirroring that we're talking about that creates such a level of connection with people. There's such a level of trust that you can become far more influential. And that is what hypnosis is all about. Now, vocal gestures, where we're going to spend some time today. When we're matching vocal gestures in real time, we're trying to copy what they do, their vocal qualities. We copy exactly. And vocal matching is all about trying to mimic the pace, to try to mimic the tone, to try to mimic the volume, to try to copy the inflection. I'm going to encourage you to avoid trying to copy accents. Because copying an accent, especially if you're not graceful at it, can sound like you're making fun of folks. I will tell you that people who are very suggestive, people who are naturally inclined to sort of automatically get into a vocal matching thing, and you'll know those people these are the people who, when they're on vacation in the South, they're there for about 3 hours and they're talking to somebody and all of a sudden y'all comes out of their mouth. And it's like, they have never said y'all before in their life up in the North. but it rolled across their tongues in Alabama because they heard it so much. People who are highly susceptible to mirroring and matching naturally will sometimes begin to mimic accent, but be careful because it can sound like you're making fun of folks. And that is not a good matching, a bonding experience. We're going to practice mirroring and matching vocal today, right? Last time, what we tried to do is we tried to mirror using reflective language. Yesterday, we did certain exercises and we reflected back reflective language through summary statements. It sounds like you're feeling this. If I hear you correctly, what I understand is that we're showing back a mirror to show that we understand. We also mirrored yesterday using a technique that's called the last three words technique, which is where you reflect back the last three words or the most important idea in a statement and either ask it as a question or ask it as or say it as a statement which engenders more communication, right? And so we practiced that quickly yesterday. And so we'll have a little bit more time practicing today. And I gave you a bit of a homework assignment. I said, try to go through and to try to do some mirroring in your conversations with folks throughout the rest of the day. Did anyone try that? Did anybody have an experience of trying to do some mirroring throughout the rest of the day with other people after we got off of this call? I'm curious as to how that went. Okay. Well, if anybody didn't do it or didn't have an experience doing it, I am going to really encourage you to keep practicing, right? This is a lab class. And so we are going to practice in a lab class. And what I've said all along is if you're coming to this class, expect to participate. Do not expect to just sit and listen. If you want to sit and listen, wait for the video to come out. But this is a class where we're going to really kind of put ourselves in a position to kind of practice with each other in real time. So what we're going to do today, we're going to try to do a matching exercise. And how this matching exercise, the vocal matching exercise, we're going to break into Zoom breakout rooms as we did yesterday. And we're going to pair you up. And depending on how many people we've got 14 people in the room. It looks like we're probably going to have 6 or 7 rooms of about 2 people. And what I want one person to do is to be the interviewer and the other person to be the interviewee. And remember, this is not yet real estate specific. This is just practice specific. Practicing mirroring and matching. What I want you to do is I want the interviewer to interview the interviewee around one of 3 topics. Let them talk about a favorite vacation or trip that they went on, as we used these yesterday. Let them talk about an event that made them upset or angry. Let them talk about something that they're looking forward to in the future. And the interviewer, I want you to ask lots of questions, the who, the what, the where, the when, the how, the why questions. Get them talking so that you can hear the cadence and you can hear the pace. And I want you to try to maintain that interviewing conversation with you as the interviewer, trying to mirror and match the speed and the volume. And guys, for practice session today, if you're being interviewed, I want you to kind of mix it up a little bit. Speak a little bit faster, speak a little bit slower, say things with emphasis, say things with a little bit more dramatic pause to give them something to practice, right? This is a lab session. So what we're going to do is in about a minute or 2, I'm going to break us into breakout rooms. You're going to have about 2 or 3 people each. We're going to keep these rooms open for about 15 minutes, which means at about 6 or 7 minutes in, I'm going to send a broadcast message out into your screen. So watch for it. I'm going to send a broadcast message into the screen that says change roles, right? We both want to kind of try both being the interviewer and the interviewee. And so if you haven't, if you haven't changed roles yet, go ahead and change roles. Even if you're not finished with the conversation, let's give everybody a chance to try this out. And then after about 15 minutes, I'm going to close the breakout rooms. Now, what I'm going to try to do today is set these up so that you'll get a 30-second countdown reminder. When I close the breakout rooms, there should be a message that comes up on your screen that says last 30 seconds. And then we're going to jump back into the main room. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how that went. Right? We're going to talk about what went well, what didn't go well, how did it feel? And so it looks like right now, in order to get at least 2 people in a room, I'm going to create 6 rooms, which means one of the rooms is going to have 3 people in it. That looks like it's going to be room number 1 right now. It's going to have 3 people in it. And I'm going to set it so that it's 15 minutes here, and we're going to set the timer back for 30 seconds. Any questions about how this exercise is going to go? Interviewer, interviewee? Matt, do you have a question?
To match them, we're going to match their cadence when we're asking questions.
You're going to ask them questions and interview them. As they give you responses, you're going to ask your follow-up questions, trying to match the volume and, and all that stuff, right? It's a lot easier sometimes when you're just going out there into the world and having conversations with people. But for the purposes of an exercise, we're going to set it up as an interview. All right?
Are you determining who's interviewing and who's the interviewee? Or?
Now, when we jump into the rooms, and the rooms are going to be automatically matched up, I don't get to spend any thought into who I'm pairing up with who. You're just going to take turns, and you guys can decide who's going to be the interviewer, who's going to be the interviewee, and halfway through, we're going to change roles. Sound good?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, let's play with it, guys. I'm going to set these rooms up here. It looks like they're going to go automatically here for 15 minutes. I'm going to open up the rooms right now. Let's put on your time travel crash helmets. Here we go. Let's talk about that a little bit. How'd that go?
It was
good. I don't know how well I was doing it. Like
here's the question. Let me give the question here for the interviewers. For those of you that were interview mode, how easy was it to kind of pick up the cadence and mirror and match? How natural was it? Who was that? Who said that?
I said that it's kind of hard to do. I know I wasn't the interviewer, but I just know it's kind of hard to do.
It's not always as natural as it sounds, is it? Anybody else want to talk about how easy did that come off to do?
Sometimes it's difficult to keep it going in what feels like a natural way.
Yeah. Especially if you don't have a lot of vocal cues to begin with, right? You think about a cold call where you're just picking up the phone and all you get is hello. You know, basically what you get is 2 syllables to run with. You know, and so if somebody picks up the phone and says, hello, right? You've got a big, wide vocal range, a high and a low note, and a lot of energy there. And your response would be quick and upbeat and hello. You kind of share it right back. If somebody picks up with kind of a hello, you're gonna enter with, hi, this is Hal. You're gonna tone it down. But the game is to try to use some of those reflective tools to get them talking more. Those last 3-word summaries, those reflective statements that can expand the conversation, because the more they're talking, the more you can start to gauge the cadence and the volume and the pace, right? Doesn't naturally come so easy, but I want you to be listening to it. The partners, how natural did your interviewer sound? Did it sound natural? Did it sound like it was a bit of work?
What kind of pasta you want?
It's okay. For me, it was okay and natural.
Good. My expectation is that until you've really gotten good at it, it's awkward at first. It's not as natural at first, right? But the more you do it, the better you get, right? And so the mirroring exercises that we did yesterday, the reflective summaries, the last 3 words, today mirroring, and today was a matching exercise so far of cadence, of pace. And those are the things that when we do them well, they hit those mirror neurons, that hit that sense of, I feel a sense of connection with you, I feel that you're like me, and it's instant building rapport. In fact, there's actually a book, one of the many, many books that I've got, written by a guy named Michael Brooks. Somehow I don't seem to have my camera on. Here it is. This is the book, Instant Rapport. And he talks very deeply about how these mirror neurons will create that. And in the very beginning of a new relationship, these are the tools that we want to lean heavily on. These are the tools that are going to create a sense of connection. Now, we're going to get into another exercise, a different kind of mirroring, a higher level kind of mirroring. But before I do that, I want to see, did we lose Jason, or is Jason still around? Because Jason had jumped in and we were talking, but now Jason seems like he's gone again. So you know what? If Jason comes back, we'll try to give Jason from Bond Street an opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit. In the meantime, here's where I want to go next. The next exercise I want to talk about has to do with what we call language representational style. This is another kind of mirroring. And guys, this is a harder one to learn, but it's a really powerful one. And It's an easier thing to learn how to do. And I'm going to put some of you guys on mute because I hear some background noise. It's an easier thing to learn how to mirror and match cadence and volume because it's so readily apparent. It's easier to be able to kind of hear what you're saying, understand it, and reflect back summaries. Representational style is different, and here's how this works. What we know is that different people have different ways of how they kind of think about and learn. It's a learning style, it's an interpretive style. People, generally speaking, tend to see the world in one of three ways: visual, auditory, or what we call kinesthetic. And we're going to unpack each one of these and sort of help you kind of think about how to listen for this. What are you listening for? But the thing that you want to understand is, for starters, just like disc behavior, we were talking about disc behavioral style yesterday, and we're going to do whole deep dives on disc and learn how to communicate to people's disc styles. But we're always a mix. Everybody's a mix. It's a kaleidoscope. You're not a pure auditory. You're not a pure kinesthetic. You're not a pure visual. But we have preferences. We tend to lean in certain ways. And so when you think about the visual language style, these are folks that when you're talking to them, they're going to be communicating in words that have kind of a visual element to them. Some examples. That sounds clear. That's clear to me. I see what you mean. Can you picture that? Look at it this way. Let's focus on something else. These are all words that have kind of a visual quality to them. Seeing, picturing, looking, focusing. I often find it interesting when sometimes people are in a conversation and they want you to kind of get your attention. Some folks will begin with the word that says, look. Others will say, listen. And they're different. They're different representations. And one of the things we're going to be listening for is, do I hear a pattern in these words? Because if I can communicate back in a similar pattern, I'm going to hit the mirror neurons, right? Now, I'm going to change gears for a second. Auditory, real quick, and then I'm going to give it up to Jason because I think he's here now. The auditory language style has words that have kind of an auditory element to them. These are the words where you'll hear people say things like, that sounds about right. Or the person who does say, listen, right? Or tell me what you mean, right? These are words that have kind of an auditory quality to them. And when you hear these patterns show up, you want to respond back in like kind. And we'll give some examples of that in a minute before we go to breakout. But this is a higher level listening skill because people don't necessarily have overwhelmingly dominating language patterns. They're subtle. But when we can listen for them and we can start to communicate back in similar ways, hits those mirror neurons square on the head, builds really, really quick rapport. And that's something we're going to practice. Guys, the third pattern here that we're going to listen for is what we call the kinesthetic language style. This is an active style. This is a physical style. And the words that people use will have a physical quality or an action kind of a quality to them. Some examples of how this could sound is, I just have a gut feeling about something. You just need to get a grip, right? There's an action, get a grip. Geez, don't be so touchy, right? These are feeling words. These are physical words. These are action words. These are different from visual and auditory. And when we hear this kind of language, we're going to try to mirror back a similar kind of language. And I'm telling you, this is a higher level mirroring skill, but it's a powerful mirroring skill. Now, the goal here is to trigger the mirror neurons by communicating back in the same representational style. So if someone says, look at it this way, we're going to respond back, I see what you're saying. Look and see are in the same visual mode, right? If someone says something like that sounds about right, you can say, look, I hear you, right? Sound, hearing, all those things are in the same kind of an auditory mode. The kinesthetic one, geez, don't be so touchy. I'm sorry, but I just don't like the way that makes me feel. These touching and feeling these are physical kind of kinesthetic words. When somebody says something in one pattern and we respond back in a different pattern, it actually causes a mismatch that causes distance, that causes a sense of disconnect. When someone says something like, it just doesn't sound right to me. And you say, well, let me show you what I mean. then we've responded with someone who's expressing an auditory communication with a visual communication, mismatch, disconnect. And those are the kinds of things that, believe it or not, can cause people to be slower to want to connect with us, to cause people to feel uncomfortable with us, where people who make that more natural matching connection become the people that they work with. And so being aware of this, listening for this, and thinking about this is something that we're going to practice for about another 10 or 15 minutes. Guys, here's what I want to do. Another breakout, 15 minutes, maybe a little bit less because we're pressed on time. It's a different interview. We're going to go back to interviews because the interview style is just an easy way to create a conversation that we can work with. I'm going to change it up here because this time I want you to interview your partner about something else. I want to interview about, describe the neighborhood that you grew up in, explain how you make your favorite recipe, or maybe talk about what you love most about your cherished family pet, maybe your current pet or a pet you grew up with. But these kinds of descriptive conversations are the ones that are going to be more apt to reveal that kind of pattern, that auditory pattern, or the visual pattern, or the kinesthetic pattern. They're more likely to come out in conversation of a descriptive element. So we're going to ask the interview to be more describing something this time. Pick one. When you're the interviewee, pick the one that you want to be interviewed around. All right, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back into a breakout room environment. And what we're going to do right now is set this up, same deal. We're probably only going to go 10 minutes this time because of, want to make sure that we kind of wrap this up at around 3 o'clock. But you're going to get the feel for it. So remember the interview, it's going to be a little bit different this time around. The options in terms of kind of what you're going to be interviewed around are describe the neighborhood you grew up in, explain how you make your favorite recipe, or talk about your favorite pet. And listen, interviewers, listen to see if you can hear any glimpse of the auditory, the visual, or the kinesthetic representational style in the language. I'm going to open up the rooms. It's going to match you up automatically. I'm going to pop in and visit some of you. Here we go. We'll talk to you in a few. All right, people are coming back in. I wasn't able to get to all the rooms this time around, and we were a little pressed for time. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We've got 5 people, 6 people. We've got a couple more folks that are looking to come back into the rooms. Here we go. 13, 14, 15, 17. All right. That's a little harder, isn't it? How did that go? Anybody find that that was a little bit more challenging to kind of actually notice these different representational patterns?
I felt like it was a little bit challenging.
You did, yeah. Were you able to pick up any of it, Bree? With the person who you're interviewing, did you begin to hear certain words that kind of gave you any kind of glimpse into either the auditory, visual, or kinesthetic?
A little bit. I feel like for me, the challenge was it was 3 of us in a room.
Mm-hmm.
And so both of the 2 women that were in there have different auditory, I guess, styles or whatever. So I found myself just trying to hone in on both different styles, I guess.
Okay. So how about some others? How about some other groups? How was this one?
I couldn't finish the recipe, so I'm kind of half stuck now. What do I do?
Yeah, you're halfway done. What are you making? We'll come over and help you finish and we'll eat it.
Exactly. So I have to share my number and maybe get a number from Joe and ask, let's just discuss more later on after the class. Otherwise, what am I feeding my family tonight?
The exercise here, it was, again, this was a descriptive exercise because in descriptive conversations are where you're going to start to hear these representational words more often. And it's just something to think about as you are kind of having conversations with folks. Again, think about this is a tool in the toolbox. This mirroring tool is a tool in the toolbox that I use to build rapport with people who are in the beginning phase of a relationship, right? I want to hit the mirror neurons and really rocket fuel up my ability to connect. And so can I get them involved in conversations where they can begin to self-disclose and to describe? Self-disclose is a different animal. We're going to talk about that another week and what happens with self-disclosure. Someone was jumping in. Who is that?
Yeah, Hal, I had a question for you. I found that the conversation, it seems to drift. So I originally want to talk about A, and then just through the natural course of the conversation, you know, we end up talking about B. And should I be aware of that? Obviously, there's times when you don't want that to happen. For these exercises, should we be concerned about that?
Not really. I mean, I think what will happen is in the real flow of real conversation, you're going to kind of follow where the conversation leads, and you're just going to continue to listen. Again, this is kind of in the overview that we talked about last week. Ultimately, we are going to practice real legitimate scripts at some point where I'm going to give you printed word and say, here's the script, let's kind of go through this and even learn how to modify and change it. But what I'm focusing on today is just rules and technique, right? And you're going to know that, okay, the conversation is going to flow where the conversation kind of flows, and I'll go with it. But I am going to keep an ear to visual words, auditory words, kinesthetic words, and respond in kind. I am going to kind of keep an ear to pace, tone, volume, try to match. I am going to try to keep an opportunity to use those summary statements and those reflective statements back to hit those mirror neurons. And guys, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts, which is why this takes practice, right?
Can I ask a question, Hal?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you guys, if you already explained it, like, like mimicking. You say keep up with the speed. If they slow, if they speed up. What if they're way too fast? Because like in my current job, when I have someone like that, I excuse myself for a minute. Or I say, well, excuse me 1 second. I walk away.
Yeah.
And then I come back, and then that kind of like interrupts them to slow them down, because sometimes a person can go, and it's just exhausting to keep up.
So, so your observation is a good one. You kind of look and see, okay, what's worked? If a pattern interrupt works, and you can kind of break that pattern. But one of the things that happens when you match is that once you're matched, is that now you can lead.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Once you're matched in a rapport, if they're speaking real fast and you're speaking real fast, and now what happens is you're both kind of speaking at the speed of light, and now you begin to slow down. And if you've got rapport, they'll slow down with you. Right? And
Got it. Okay, so it's like you leading them. So
right.
They're on the expressway. You just take them off the ramp. Let's go local.
Yeah, you slow them down if need be. Right? That's the idea.
Got it.
You've done it because you've created rapport, and that's influence.
Okay.
That's the definition of influence, one, because you've got rapport. Now you can influence their actions.
Yeah. All right.
All right, guys, we're a little over time, and so we're going to wrap. I hope this is useful. I hope this is something that you can begin to start to really think about and add into the toolbox. Right? It takes time to get these skills down, to get these skills kind of learned, but that's what these labs are for, just to introduce them, give you a forum to play with them. We'll come back next Monday. We'll jump in with some others. But during the week, what I'd encourage you to do is just keep your ears open, right? Listen to the representational styles if you can pick it up. Listen for opportunities to reflect back with summary statements and the last 3 word reflections, and to try to mirror and match the patterns. Work, just play with it during the week. And I think you're going to find sort of in the real life lab of being out there in the world, you're going to find that's where you really start to perfect this stuff. Anyway, we're going to have to pack it up, guys. We got to go. I will talk to you soon. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you real soon.